One of the most important things as a farmer that you've got to do every year is manage your residue, because you have to get a great stand with your plants, and that means good seed to soil contact. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit today.
Well, first of all, residue is very valuable. There's nutrients in there, there's a good source of carbon. We aren't saying, burn off that residue or bale it all up and get rid of it. That's absolutely the wrong way to go. It's a last resort.
Well,
the first thing that you want to do
now you bring this stuff up. Now we got to talk about that. Okay, so hold on. All right, with this burning thing. Burning, certainly there are some situations where you may have to burn residue, but we just want you to understand you are going to lose a good percentage of the nutrients that was in that residue. So it's lost fertilizer dollars that you now have to go replace with commercial fertilizer. So that's why we don't like that.
Well,
as far as
like
the baling,
it's a last resort.
As far as the baling of residue, I don't have a problem with that as long as you're using that for your livestock and then you're going to bring manure back out to the field. That's fine. You're replacing what you removed. But just understand, if you bale residue up, how much the fertility in that is worth. Because I can tell you on our own farm, we were baling up wheat straw, for example, just a few years ago, and we were selling that off. And then about 3 years ago, the guys started baling some up, and I said, hey, well, hold on a second. Fertilizer prices are at just about an all-time record high. How much can we get per bale if we sell this? And they told me how much it was per bale, and I said, I'm running the math here, and it's not adding up. We're gonna do all the work of this baling, and we're gonna take the residue off the field, and we're literally gonna have to spend more money to put commercial fertilizer back on. I'm not doing that. So ever since then, we've been chopping up that residue because fertilizer prices have gotten a lot higher. So yeah, so this led into this 2-minute discussion. But anyway, the whole point is we just want to make sure you understand what the value of that residue is. We want to keep it out in the field, but you've got to manage it properly so you can get good seed to soil contact with your seed.
Okay, so if we're leaving all the residue in the field, and that's what I wanted, I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now we're leaving all the residue in the field.
Yep.
So either you're no-till, or you're trying to bury that and do conventional till and try and make the soil black again, or you're just trying to push it out of the way and do something like a strip till or a minimum till or even no till with coulters and just move stuff out to the side.
Okay, so like right behind us, for example, we've got an example of two different things. We've got corn stalks last year that'll go to soybeans this year, and there we did full tillage. Basically, we dissed, we chiseled, we're going to field cultivate in the spring. Now, you don't have to do that. We don't do that in every field. But anyway, we did that for this particular field. That's how we're managing that residue. On the other side, where we had soybean stubble, there we did strip till. So all we did is a little bit of tillage in between. We will do no more tillage come spring. We're just going to go right out there and plant. Either way, there's going to be some residue that's left out there, and we just want to make sure that with our planter, we're doing a great job, because that's really the last stop, the last chance we have to get that residue out of the way or manage it somehow, some way.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about the soybeans first, because when we first came out, I said, okay, let's position ourselves so we can see both the corn and the soybeans. And Brian said, oh, the soybeans, no big deal. And I said, all right, we're going to have fun today. Now, with the soybeans, here's the main problem that I see going across the country. It's our combine harvesting that soybean field, because we're not spreading that residue back out evenly in the field. We end up with windrows of residue. Now, that's fine if you're going to bale it up and you're doing something with it, livestock feed, bedding, whatever the case may be. That's okay. But in most cases, it's guys that are planning on coming back next year and they say, well, it's soybeans. I can no-till right in there. And then they put one row right through that windrow, and that corn doesn't come up and it's behind all year long.
Okay, so that's something that you can do with that combine, is making sure you've got the residue spread evenly. Another thing that you could do with the combine that we've done, for example, with corn, is we're using a chopping corn head now, and that makes all the difference in the world, in my opinion, in no-till, strip till, and conventional till. So when we first started doing some no-tilling about 15 years ago, guys told us, oh, you want to leave those stalks stand high? Absolutely no way do I want to do that, because what we found is the stalks tip over. Now we've got this big piece of stalk. We try to cut it in the spring with a coulter, doesn't cut very well, and then we hairpin the residue, and now we drop a seed on top of it. Seed doesn't grow. We got a major issue. Ever since we started running that chopping corn head, we've solved those problems. So with our coulters in the spring, we don't cut very well a lot of times because it's cold, it's damp. It just doesn't work that well. So what we try to do is push that residue out of the way, and it's real easy to push out of the way or just move to the side a little bit because the residue is in small pieces.
Okay, well, here again, we're going to have to debate about this just a little bit. When we're talking about moving that residue to the side, here's where I see a lot of problems. When you drive around the country, you see guys moving residue a little bit, maybe just enough to open that furrow up, but not enough to clear the gauge wheels. And all of a sudden your gauge wheels are jumping up over corn stalks here and there, and you watch planting depth around the country, and you can see that both by following the planter and doing some digging, where you got some seeds at 3 inches, some seed at 1 inch, and we're going to talk about the importance of that planting depth here later on in the show. But it's just a disaster. And then when corn pops out of the ground, you got some that's 3 leaf, some that's 1 leaf, and you just aren't going to have a consistent ear size or consistent competition throughout the season. So when you are clearing that residue, make sure you're doing a good enough job to get it wider than the gauge wheels so you have a consistent planting depth. That's a big, big issue.
So our whole thing today is, everybody's got different pieces of equipment. They're farming in different styles. Even on our farm, we farm different pieces of land, different soil types, using different tillage practices. We're planting different crops. So we don't have one exact specific thing for you to do, but we just want you to understand it's important to work on that residue in the fall. You've got to spread it evenly. You've got to chop it up in small pieces if possible. Then in the spring, you've got to move it out of the way. You've got to, whatever you do, however you want to manage it, you want to have nice, even planting across your field. You want to have great seed to soil contact. You do those things and you're bound to have higher yields in whatever crop you're planting.
One last comment, Brian. What about getting that residue to break down more in the fall? Guys talk about, well, I put on nitrogen and it helped break it down, or I put on a biological product and it helped break it down.
Okay, so that's one of the things with chopping that residue in really small pieces. Now we have a lot better chance to get it broken down earlier, and we see an absolute difference with that. As far as putting more nitrogen or sulfur on, it depends on how much nitrogen and sulfur your crop had to begin with. In other words, on our farm, we're usually, I'll be honest, we're probably overdoing it a little bit on nitrogen and sulfur. So our crop already has all kinds of nitrogen and sulfur. If you're a little short towards the end of the season, by all means, spray your crop residue with some more. That will help get that bacteria going faster and breaking down that residue faster. As far as biological products, we haven't seen a lot yet that we've had success with, but that's not to say there aren't some out there or there aren't some coming soon. We're very big on biological products and the future of them. It's just what can actually work today on your farm.
So it's pretty fun, Brian, being here talking about corn and soybeans, but either way, no matter what last year's crop was, you have to manage that residue properly to have a successful crop this year.
Well, another thing you've got to manage properly is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?